I'm talking to boomers and older people, when instead of being mad at younger people for advocating for themselves, why don't you take the clown makeup off, put on your adult panties, and advocate for yourself? That way you'll actually be doing something productive for yourself and you'll actually see positive results.
I love how he pointed out how people in school were definitely tricked into collecting college debt. Because the conservative argument against that, and oftentimes the boomer argument against that, would be like, well, you were 16. You should have known better. You should have thought more about it. You should have looked deeper into it. You should have had some more personal responsibility. Again, as we touch on here at TYT all the time, way back in the good old days when everything cost $3 and, used to cost 50 cents to go to the tank and fill yourself up and stuff like that. Boomers often seem to not be able to understand that we're living in a world where wages haven't risen, where the cost of living continues to rise. They're sitting on savings. They're sitting on things that they've been stacking up for quite some time. So in their eyes, it's like, well, why isn't anybody doing this? Why isn't anybody taking advantage?
I've been working for about 15 years, just about half my life. I've worked over 2 dozen jobs, and every single job is the same. Every single job, doesn't matter the industry, sucks. Every single one. Every single one. Capitalism is designed such that our labor as workers creates more profit for the people on top than it does for us. And that is inherently toxic. And we as younger millennials and Gen Z understand that that is inherently toxic. Elder millennials, Gen X, boomers, y'all have convinced yourselves, done mental gymnastics to convince yourselves into thinking that this is somehow okay. And we younger millennials and Gen Z are not with this.
And again, I often point out that they came up in a time where segregation was law. They came up in a time where people were literally fighting tooth and nail to the death often to keep little black girls and little black boys from segregating, or rather integrating into public school systems. But those are the people who are more rational. Those are the people who had their heads screwed on a bit tighter. Yeah, right.
Especially because we are almost all riddled with student loan debt that we were tricked into getting because we were told it was a good debt, right? Inflation is high, cost of living is high, and wages are at what feels like an all-time low, right? Whatever it is, it's definitely not enough to live comfortably, all things considered.
And speaking of college debt, one of the biggest problems with our education system is that over the decades, more of the incentive has gone into the entertainment on the campus. The huge facilities, the gym facilities that have 40 swimming pools and, just 8 levels of state of the art equipment that does all this special stuff. And then, just that may be really cool, but it's driving up the cost every year to go to those universities. And then people are taking out all these loans just to go through an education system that hasn't been updated or upgraded in way too long, being shoved out into a job market that's completely changed. We live in a gig economy. We don't live in a job market where people are staying in careers for 30 or 40 years. Entire industries are disappearing because we live in a world where apps are a thing. I'm sitting here making a living off of sitting in front of a camera. Going to in-person meetings, showing up to the office is becoming less and less of a necessity, even more so just after COVID. So the world and the job market is continuing to change. Meanwhile, our education system has remained stagnant. And so the incentive really needs to be taken away from the campus entertainment and more into a system, not just collegiate, but from kindergarten on up, that prepares students to enter a world where a lot of the burden is going to be on more decisions. They're going to have more options, more gigs, more opportunities, and not as much of just a smooth ride forward in a single career.
Because every job, right? We're at this place now where all the jobs pay this unlivable wage. So we have nothing to lose. There's no incentive for us to stay at these jobs because we could just, when we get fed up with it, we'll just move to the other job that pays until it gets too much there, and then we'll move somewhere else.
Like my man pointed out, we're in a situation where most of the jobs are, giving an equal amount of BS, whether it be low pay, no real benefits, and maybe a work environment that's just a little too much or a little too little. But there's no real balance. So it's really easy to leave these places. So unless, organizations are really providing a healthy culture that stimulates and promotes personal growth in someone's individual career, unless they're providing real sets of benefits, not just necessarily like healthcare and stuff, but, unless an organization is really opening up the world of the people who work for them, then it's really easy to walk out the door and go somewhere else, you know. Even people who are in relatively good positions, oftentimes you got to get a part-time gig or a part-time hustle. Maybe you have something extra to pay for a little bit, so you would make an adjustment. You know, and if it's just like that, if it's just for some extra money, I'm definitely not going to put up with no BS because I can just go to another job and possibly put up with the same thing. So, the silver lining is that we're in a time where unless people are really given something, then they're not going to get anything out of the public. And so we need to take advantage of that politically, get better candidates in the office and push forth for better policy.